I'm actually sitting in the porch of a house called Utopia Limited in the village of Stackton Trestle, deep in the Suffolk countryside and not a million miles from Bury St Edmunds. It's the home of my guests this week, and they are, as many of you will have guessed, the dear ladies themselves, Dr. Evadne Hinge and Dame Hilda Bracket. Let's come to you first, if we can, Dr. Hinge. Will you tell me where you were born?
Well, I was born, Richard, in Scotland, in Muir of Ord in Inverness. That's where I actually was born.
What was your father?
My father was a fairly well-known musician of the time, Hector Hinge, composer, a pianist, music teacher, and general all-rounder in the music field. He encouraged me, of course, to pursue a musical career.
Where were you educated?
Well, now, I went to a local school, first of all, and then later on to the University of Muir of Ord, which sadly is now defunct, no longer, it fell down a few years ago, and I gained my degree there in music, my doctorate.
Can we come now to you, Dame Hilda? Where were you born?
I was born in Bracket Basing in Kent on the 23rd of January, and it was a very, very nasty, stormy night. And just as I came into the world, apparently with a loud scream, the gutter broke above the front of the house, bringing water down through 2 floors of Bracket Towers, the family home. And, I believe my mother turned to the midwife at the time saying, oh, this one's always going to cause a bit of a stir throughout life.
Where were you educated?
Well, I was educated at a local convent school to begin with, under the strict regime of Mother Roger. And then, of course, I went off to Sandeldine, before finishing school in Switzerland. I was at the Schloss in Switzerland. And this was before I went to Italy at the age of 19.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
Yes, I have one of each. Yes, I have a brother and sister either side of me.
How did you two meet, Dr. Hinge?
Well, that was a very long time ago now, Richard, of course, 1945, in the Empire Theatre, Snitterton, when we were both members of the Rosa Charles Opera Company.
Tell us a little bit, if you will, about those early days with the Rosa Charles.
Oh, wonderful days, weren't they?
Oh, they were absolutely marvellous. I joined as a leading soprano. I sort of was auditioned for the lady then who ran the company, Lois Peyton-Varder. She was an American whose parents had been in the antique business. Her mother was Rosa and her father was Charles Peyton-Varder. And when they died, they left a large amount of money for their daughter to use as she felt fit. And, of course, she'd always loved the world of opera, and she saw herself as a sort of the American equivalent of Lillian Bayliss, who started the Sadler's Wells. And so the Rosa Charles Opera Company was born, and it was her intention, as you know, her forebears in other opera companies, to put opera in English on so that they could get to the masses. Well, of course, little did she know, waiting round the corner was Dr. Evadne Hinge, who was playing Mona Hinge then, actually banjologist Mona Montpellier, she'll tell you. And, of course, I was Hilda Bracket. I had not been damed until after the war. But then that's another story. And so my first job in the Rosa Charles was to paint a piece of scenery, and while I did it, I sang and hit a top C, and I remember Lois coming to me and saying, "Okay, honey, you're in."
What was your position in the company at this time?
Well, you see, I had just sort of halfway completed my training at university, and during the summer months I managed to get a job with the company as assistant to the assistant musical director. And that was my sort of introit, so to speak, into the world of opera.
You only were allowed to carry the musical scores from the van to the
Yes,
door
I'm
of
aware
the
of that,
theatre,
yes,
weren't you?
absolutely,
I mean,
yes.
they wouldn't let you in the pit in case you fell over anything.
There was no question of going in the pit in those days. No, I was merely the assistant. I was terribly young, of course.
Yes, of course,
17, you see.
but you were, in fact, to rise to better things.
Indeed, yes, I've always tried to do that.
See, I was in the company before Evadne. I joined in
Well, she's
39.
older, you see.
Can you name some of your peers in the Rosa Charles?
Our colleagues during some wonderful artists from the British opera world, weren't there?
Well, there was Cledwyn Muggershall for a
Cledwyn,
start,
yes.
and he was a great strength to me when I went on at very short notice, my very first role with the company, as Mad Margaret in Ruddigore, and he played Sir Despard Murgatroyd. And he put his arms around me that night and said, "All right, darling, on you go, we're all with you, we're all backing you," which was wonderful support, because the girl who was to have played the part then, I think it was Renata Margaret Turnstiles, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right.
I think
yes,
it was.
yes.
Was
She
it?
usually
Or was
played
it
Margaret.
Vestibules?
No, not Vesta, no. She
No.
was a bit old by that
Ah,
time,
right,
wasn't
yes.
she?
Anyway, she was taken ill, and I had to go on and sing the. So I'd always had a great affection and warmth for Cledwin.
For Cledwin, yes.
And of course, we made great friends with Nanton Odstock, who was
Oh,
our
dear
leading
boy.
baritone, and
Charming
his
boy.
charming compatriot Boothby
Boothby,
Pagnell.
yes,
he was
yes.
leading cello.
They were a couple, so to speak.
Yes, lovely people.
This was not to last, though. I think the Rosa Charles finished, what, about 55?
Ooh, 54.
54,
The end of
yes.
54, yes.
Financial reasons, basically, and a rather unpleasant court case which ensued. And we won't go into that,
Yes.
however.
No, I don't. It's a bit unsavoury.
Yes, just a bit,
Yes.
yes. All sorts of accusations held back and forth about financial peculation, but
And we never, ever discovered what happened to Lois. I think she went back to America.
she could still be in prison, of course.
You were not supposed to mention that.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to
no,
slip
no,
out. Slipped
yes,
out.
yes.
We can probably cut it from the programme, ladies.
Splendid.
Where to from there?
Well, Dame Hilda and I quite unexpectedly were asked to travel to Cyprus to entertain the troops. For 12 months in 1955, which we did with the greatest of pleasure.
Oh, I mean, that was wonderful. I shall always remember this thundering sound, and I thought, I don't expect, storms in Cyprus, but it wasn't. It was the clatter of the army boots across the tarmac as our plane touched
Yeah,
down.
we were mobbed, weren't we?
Well,
Yeah.
absolutely. The boys were so thrilled to see us. They fell on us,
They did,
know.
yeah.
It's wonderful, yes. They hadn't seen a white woman for a long time.
Well, or any kind of woman for that matter.
And there weren't any white ones when we left because we were so sunburned.
Yes, that's right.
That's right, yes.
How long did you tour abroad?
Ooh, we were there for
About
a
12
year.
months.
Yes,
Yeah.
about just around 12 months, yes.
Then I think, if I remember rightly, you toured in England after that.
Oh, yes. Well, then, you see, we came back to England and we went to visit, from a little invitation, my ex-dresser, Maud Print, who was actually Maud Bullitt at the time, but she'd married while we were abroad and had gone to live in the sleepy village of Stacton Trestle, where, of course, we are
quite.
now
Yes,
with you.
indeed.
And, I should say you are with us. And it was when we fell in love with this village and said, well, we've got to live here. And we'd thought of maybe, well, we'd saved a little bit, and I was going to teach singing, and Evadne would teach pianoforte. But we were like that for maybe 20 years until the mid-70s we were asked to go on the road again.
Before we get into that area, I know that you have many stories about digs when you were touring in England. I think there was
yes.
the matter in Grange over Sand.
Oh, yes,
Oh,
yes.
that dreadful woman, yeah.
Grange, Mrs. Malabaloiricum.
Indeed.
Yes, oh, heavens above, yes. And we arrived at the door of the digs there after a long train journey, no corridor, so it made it twice as bad. And every time we stopped, we were in the middle of the countryside, never at a station. So we arrived there, and she opened the door, and she said, oh, if I had known you was coming, I would have opened the tin of salmon. And there were 8 of us, you see. And now, knowing my luck, I'd have been the one behind the upturned lid. But anyway, that was her, yes.
And it didn't improve. The week got worse and worse, didn't it, dear?
It did indeed, yes. Serving up
You all lost
gravy.
pounds.
Yes. She used to put gravy on the table in a cup without a handle.
No.
She said, well, I lost my boat during the war.
Lost more than her boat, I think. Yes.
Yes.
We've
I've just remembered the name of her boarding house.
What was it?
Shagodansk.
Ah, yes,
Yes,
that's right.
I remembered it now.
Forgotten
Yes.
Can we also talk about the beautiful evenings in the late 1940s at the Buxton and the Harrogate theatres?
Oh, yes, beautiful theatres. Great favourites, both of them. Lovely. And those shows, of course, were marvellous, covered by the BBC. They came with their cameras and recorded them for posterity. And they were wonderful evenings, because the Buxton Opera House had been closed for many, many years, you see, after the war, just opened occasionally, I think, for a Christmas show. But it was rebuilt in the 70s, reopened, absolutely wonderful, great atmosphere.
Your move to Stacton Trestle, I think 1956, yes, quite. You soon, it appears to me, became very involved in village life. I have in mind the operatic society and
The Stoats, yes.
Well, when we arrived in Stacton, the local opera company hadn't done anything very exciting for quite a long time, so we stepped in and took over, you see. and spurred them on to further efforts, and from whence they became really quite excellent. One of the top in the country, I would say.
Oh, yes, and one of the very few amateur dramatic companies to be filmed by a television company, again for posterity, to show that music was alive in parts of Britain, and Suffolk, of course, was as big as anywhere else. I think had Benjamin Britten been in the area at the time, the Snape might never have taken place.
Indeed,
it would have been
right.
Stockton, I think, yes.
How did you, or how were you able to integrate into village life in other ways yourselves, being so well known as you were?
Well, coming from country-style villages, because you see my hometown of Bracket Basing in Kent, near Dymchurch, very country, countrified, and I was used to that sort of thing. And Evadne from Scotland,
Quite, yes,
Muir of
small
Ord,
village,
very
yes.
small. They only play bowls in Muir of Ord, really. That's the
That's
biggest
only twice a year.
topic of conversation, isn't it?
Yes.
And one shop. So, of course, we were
Yes,
used
often
to
closed.
that. Yes, oh yes. Well, if a bowl had gone through it.
Yeah.
Yes, it would be closed, yes.
I know you also have very close affinity with the church. Do you still play the organ there, Doctor?
Not so much as I used to, no. I just don't have the time anymore, unfortunately. We're often away on weekends. Sunday I'm not there. But my deputy takes over. Evelyn Strauss's a girl I've trained myself.
German, Fräulein Strasser.
Yes, nice girl.
Yes, but of course, after your niece went, I mean, that was never really quite the same, was
It's
it?
coming back, Yes. I've had to let out my loud stockings.
You very often in your shows talk about the last night of the proms.
Yes.
Did you ever appear?
No,
Not,
we haven't.
no, only the Wimbledon Proms outside London. And we started the Wimbledon Proms in 1980, I think 10 years ago, wasn't it?
That's
79,
right, yes.
80.
Sort of
we
friendly
started.
rivalry to the
Yes.
big thing at the Albert Hall.
And
Of course,
right up to this year, and the Wimbledon Theatre is closing down for refurbishment and redevelopment, but we're hoping they will retain the lovely auditorium. And so there was a very big occasion in was it May? I think April this year.
Yes, indeed,
Of
April,
the
yeah.
Wimbledon Proms, which was a great success.
Oh, wonderful.
Overran by
Wonderful.
30 minutes, yes.
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 Do you still work with Mr. Landings and Mr. Tolman?
Oh, and now that was Tewkesbury Tolman,
Yes.
our butcher.
And Fargen Landings.
And
yes.
Fargen
Yes.
Landings,
Fargen,
yes, right, yes, dear Fargen. No, Fargen took up dentistry and went to other areas of Britain, I think.
He's been
somewhere.
very successful, I think.
He has,
Yes.
apparently, yes. And but Tewkesbury is still with the amateur
Is he?
dramatics,
I
but
wondered.
of course we don't see so much of him now because we're on the road so much, and still runs a very successful butcher's business in
One of the
Stackton
best,
Trestle.
yeah.
Yes.
Indeed.
Old-fashioned butchers,
Yes, they all wear straw boaters,
But there was, I think, a memorable revival of the Mikado in Stackton, in which I think he was with you.
Yes, and he played Pooh Bar.
Mm-hmm.
He was the shortest Pooh Bar in history. Yes, because it's a very big part, and Lord High Everything Else took on a totally new meaning because
Yes, because he's rather short. you
yes,
see.
he's under
Can
5 foot
imagine.
but a big voice. He makes
Indeed.
makes up in other ways, you see.
Let's talk about more, with respect, well-known names. Noel Card, Peggy Wood, Evelyn Leigh.
Yes. Well, Noel Card never came to Stackton Trestle, which I think he would have loved
Didn't he?
had he done. No, never. No, not after he moved to Switzerland, and that made a big change in his life. Peggy Wood, bless her. The original, Sarah
Sorry.
Linden.
Yes,
bittersweet.
yes, right.
Yes, and the part, as you may know, was written with Evelyn Leigh in mind, but she
Indeed.
turned it down because the show was being backed by C.B. Cochrane, and she'd had a slight contretemps with dear C.B., and so she felt, no, she didn't want to be sort of... And then, of course, it was going to be put on in America, and so she wrote to Noel and said, I'd like to do it for you, and that's how it all came about.
What sort of a person was Noel?
Well, a very dry, witty person with a very peculiar sense of humour.
With a very kind heart underneath one.
Yes, underneath. I mean, dear Joan Sutherland, and Richard Boing, when they were looking for somewhere to live in Switzerland, because they'd taken Switzerland to their own hearts, they were looking desperately for somewhere nice to live, and Noel said, you must come over to my side of the island and have a look round here. And there was nothing available, and on the day they were leaving, Richard saw this old tumble-down sort of chateau next to Noel's, and he said, well, I don't know, it's been closed for years. Anyway, he helped them with the work, and they got it.
Les Avants.
Les Avants
Yes,
in, Switzerland.
I didn't know Switzerland was an island until now. That's interesting.
Well, it was Noel's sense of humour,
yes, I see.
Oh, bless her.
Dame Hilda. Let's talk for a moment about Julian.
Julian.
Oh, my nephew.
Oh, that
my
Julian.
Oh, Julian, bless his heart. Yes, yes, sweet boy.
Don't see him so much these days.
Not
do
so
we?
much, no. We seem to be getting busier, and he's very busy, and because
Well, he's
he's
tied up
South
frequently.
Wimbledon, you see. Oh yes, he's nearly always tied up, and he enjoys it, I think, being so busy. And his guest house, of course, has never let him down. Never.
No, he's expanded in the last couple of years too. Yeah.
Oh, yes, got a conservatory now. And he's very happy there. And, of course, we're always in touch by phone, if not, actually physically, But he's done wonders for South Wimbledon. He's really put that place on the map. And, of course...
And it needs all the help
Oh,
it can get.
yes.
believe
I mean,
me.
during tennis fortnight, you can't move in his house, can't move in the garden. It's awash with people, And it's always been very popular with the armed forces and the
younger set.
Yes. Musical evenings. And, oh, yes, marvellous. He's so full of fun. He's a good nephew. I mean, if I'd married, he's the sort of son I would have liked, Yes.
Very generous, I believe.
Oh, frightfully generous. Well, to the point, of course, that should, in the early days, I mean, not so much now, but in the early days, should he find that he had a spare bedroom, a vacant bed, and nobody had applied to stay there, he would go out and look for them.
Yes, kind-hearted.
Oh,
unfortunately.
yes.
Absolutely. Can we talk just for a moment about your subsequent decoration, Dame Hilda?
Oh, for the front bathroom.
No, not that one, your own.
Oh, my damehood.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yes,
bet,
yes.
yeah.
But the front bathroom was lovely. You'd like it. Roast chintz. But, well, my damehood was awarded for services to opera during the war years, and I had to go to Windsor Castle to receive it from the Princess Royal, that was Princess Mary, because the king had flu and couldn't get out of bed. Well, he could probably, but he didn't want to because he really wasn't well. And so, yes, I was delighted, and I sort of said, me? Moi? A title? Oh! And I opened the deckel-edged envelope, with my nail file, and then I shot along the corridor to Evadne's, and I knocked on her door, and I waited several moments while she shot the bolts and took the chains off. And I said, look what's come through the post. And she went, she was, I think, speechless because, for my sake, she was overcome. Yes. She wasn't a doctor then, of course, just still plain Evadne Hinge.
Of course I was a doctor, dear, yes. You're talking about.
Were you?
Of course I was.
I don't
yes.
remember that.
Can I,
Funny.
can I ask how it changed your life?
Not at all, dear.
Not at all.
No, I wouldn't let anything like that
Well, you don't
change
get
my
paid
life.
for it, It's not money or anything.
Would you suggest that it changed her life at all, Dr. Hinge?
Change her opinion, certainly, yes. Very swell-headed she became just after that, but she's got used to it now.
Listen to her.
Settled down.
I've never told you to use my title.
I don't want to use your title, dear. What for?
Let's move out of this area if we can,
She's
as soon as we
overexcited,
can.
Richard, overexcited.
Quite. Let's move out of this area if we can and talk a little bit about your work for the Church of St Oswald on the Trestle. You do church work for them?
Oh, yes, Evadne still cleans the porch once a week. Yes. And I sing in the choir at Christmas.
Oh, you do?
Oh, yes.
We're
yes.
there.
Midnight
yes,
Mass,
yes.
yes.
Not recently, because we've been doing pantomime at Christmas.
Yes. And Evadne plays the organ when requested, if she is available. But we are obviously, because Evadne is one of the burghers, you see, of Stacton Trestle, being a councillor and an ex-mayor.
That's right, yes.
Yes. She's one of the biggest burghers of Stacton Trestle, aren't you,
yes,
dear?
yes, indeed, yes.
Yes. So, of course, we're always there in the front. And, you see, when I lived at home in Bracket Basing, we had the family pew. You see, we had the Bracket pew.
They were a
Oh,
nice
yes.
family, weren't they, the Pews? Yeah.
She's warming up. She's had cornflakes, you see. It's really got to her system. Bit of roughage. It makes such a difference to the woman. It really
Yes, I'm sure it does.
Because I've been worried about her, Oh, I pray I'll go first, because, on the heat, like today with this weather, she shouldn't have come out. But no, she's braved it, yes.
How to Edinburgh?
How did we get to Edinburgh?
How were you called?
Oh, yeah,
Telephone, yes.
Telephone conversation, yes. We would like to put on an evening of nostalgia in the Edinburgh Festival, 1974. And would you care to make a contribution? And I said, well, is it a cheque or... And they said, oh, no. We want you to actually perform. And we said, oh, heavens above. We haven't done concerts for a long time, apart from locally. And they said, well, there is a great revival and a resurgence of, nostalgia. And so that was how we went to Edinburgh in the 74 festival and put on an evening of music. And it was from there that things began to start up again for us.
Indeed. How were you received?
Rapturously, if I may use the term. I think when we first arrived in Edinburgh, hardly anyone knew who we were. But after about 4 or 5 performances, suddenly the theatre was packed every night, and word-of-mouth advertising spread, and we were inundated with requests to appear here, there, and everywhere. Very gratifying, that was, of
Oh,
course.
it was wonderful.
At our
Absolutely
ages,
wonderful.
I mean, because it was...
Well, at your age, yes.
And yours too, dear.
And,
Yeah.
I mean, it really was very gratifying, the response. And, of course, from there, you see, it led on to so many other things.
Well, we haven't stopped since, have we?
No, no.
In 18 years.
The Ambassador, I think you went to.
The Ambassador's Theatre, they took the mousetrap off and moved it next door so we could go in. Yes, and it's been running ever since, the mousetrap at St Martin's. We went into the Ambassador's and ran there for a long season. Then we transferred. We were at the Mayfair, the Royal Court, the Mayfair, the Ambassador's. Very busy. We've up to now played a total of, I think it is 17, 18 West End theatres, which is really not bad, is it? When you consider some people in show business have never played the West End. We've been very lucky. Played the Old Vic, Palladium, Drury Lane,
National?
Covent Garden, the National,
Sadler's
Sadler's Wells, all the theatres,
Globe.
bar the Apollo. We've done all the theatres in Shaftesbury Avenue. Played them all. They're all wonderful, isn't it?
For want of a better way of putting it, when did television discover you?
Well, that was shortly after our Edinburgh.
I think it
foray,
was,
wasn't
yes.
It
The
was
man
in the
came along
70s.
behind us with a camera. And that's how we first appeared on television.
We first appeared, the very first time was in Edinburgh, in fact.
Yes,
in
it was.
1974.
That's right. And then, of course, people became curious. Because if I dare say this, and it's not meant in any, uppity way, for ladies of our standing, from our background, to suddenly start appearing in variety theatres, but in the world of opera, and to appear on sort of chat shows, programmes, it was something quite different, and they wanted to know why we had taken to doing it, you see.
But you can't compare the work that you do with variety.
Oh, good heavens, no.
No, we wouldn't dream
heavens
of it.
above,
No, no, not
But you
at all.
see, these theatres used to put variety on, but suddenly there was no variety, so the theatres had to remain open. So in came the current taste, the current trend.
Actually, that does call to mind an anecdote. We may just have time to slip in, if you would, about the. I think it was the gentleman with the unicycle.
Oh, that was in the digs, wasn't
Oh,
it?
such a long time ago.
I think that was up in Grange over Sands,
that in
wasn't
Grange?
it? I think
Not
that
sure,
was at the same. Yes.
That couple
Because
next
they
door to
were a
us, yes.
variety act. Yes.
That's what I meant, yeah.
Yes, and they used to rehearse every day on the landing.
Yeah.
On the
Yeah,
lino.
right.
That's
Making
right.
the oddest noises. Yeah.
Yes, and and as he sort of cycled around the landing, she would do the splits, and every time she went down, she whistled. Yes, and that's right. And she never caught a cold, did she? I remember.
Not as far as I'm aware,
That
dear,
woman
no.
didn't know the whistling splits. Yes. But of course, lino was perfect for that sort of thing. A
Absolutely.
fitted carpet would never have worked.
Wouldn't
yes.
have.
No,
No,
of course
no.
not. No, quite. You've toured also with military bands.
Oh, yes. The Grenadiers, the Irish Guards, the Scots Guards, the Welsh Guards. We've... the Marines. We've only need now the lifeguards for a full house. We've sung with them all. Wonderful.
Where have you been with them?
Well, we've been all over Britain.
Have you?
Difficult to say, so many places.
Television as well. Albert Hall, the Royal Albert Hall.
Cardiff.
Cardiff, yes.
yes.
Nottingham. All the big theatres, the halls like St David's Hall, they are the big, lovely 3,000-seaters. They're great big theatres. But they are for concerts, that sort of thing, as against plays. They are really for big musical concerts.
I know that you have appeared at the various Royal Command performances as well. Can you tell us
We've
about
been
that?
very lucky to be asked to appear on many, many occasions now for various members of the royal family. And of course we have in fact done 2 of the Royal Variety shows, 1979 and 1989. I think.
That's right, yes.
Yeah,
It was 10
yeah.
years between them, yes.
And also we've appeared for His Royal Highness Prince Charles and his lovely wife, Lady Diana.
On separate
Princess of
occasions,
Wales.
that was, yes.
And
Princess Anne 3
Princess
times,
Anne, oh,
Prince
yes,
Philip,
yeah.
Princess Alexandra, Princess Margaret, Prince Edward. It's really quite lovely, that they keep digging us up, wheeling us on.
good. Rephrase
Yes,
that, yeah.
yes. Great fun.
A thought does occur to me. If this continues at this rate, it seems likely that further decorations might be in order.
Well, one wouldn't like to speculate on that, I don't think, Richard. We'll have to wait and see.
I don't think I want to sit in the House of Lords along with all those people who go to sleep.
No,
So I think
no.
I'll be happy as I am.
Well, I was wondering whether perhaps the scales might be levelled.
Very doubtful. Very
think?
doubtful. Yes.
I just wondered, that's all. Pantomimes.
Oh, lovely, great fun. We did our first pantomime together last Christmas. The year before, I was asked to play Fairy Godmother and Cinderella in Southampton. And I said, oh, well, yes, I think I'd rather like to do it. And, of course, as they said to me, and I fully realised, well, in previous years there'd been Anna Neagle had played Fairy Godmother, and Dare Evelyn Leigh playing Fairy Godmother. And I said, well, why not? Yes, I'd love to. So that was it. Well, last year, after the success of Southampton, they asked Evadne and I to appear in a pantomime together, and she wasn't very sure about it. She said, well, what can I do? I said, well, you can pull a couple of faces and frighten the children, which she did beautifully.
Yes, I'm told it was very successful.
And she played the wicked fairy, and I played the good fairy, Meadowsweet. But the wonderful part about this was it was the Sleeping Beauty, and it was a very lavish production in Plymouth. And we did excellent business, and the figures delivered at the end of the run were the highest figures ever since the theatre had opened in 1982. And but the exciting part was I flew for the first time. I was on a high wire, and they flew me for my first entrance, which was excellent until the last week where my dress caught on the scenery and tore the entire bottom off. And I just landed on one foot and said, well, what an entrance, you know.
Shades of Jean Batkin.
Yes, dear Big Jean, yes.
Oh, I'd forgotten about Jean Batkin.
And she fell on the Mars bar, you
Yes,
remember?
yes.
Had to be
Sad
removed.
case,
yes.
that, really,
It
Jean.
was,
Oh.
yes.
Nice girl.
Farmer's wife now.
But
Yeah.
it did, I think, inspire you to write the duet for the Three Little Maids.
Oh,
that was
yes.
when Jean didn't make it. Well, I
That's
didn't
right.
write it. No, we merely performed it with two.
Well, yes,
three,
yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because she was in the
Arranged it,
wings
perhaps.
waiting to come on, but
That's
she
right.
caught her kimono on a
Kimono on a
protrusion.
protrusion, yeah.
That's right, and so we had to just do it without her.
Indeed.
Yes.
Pantomimes, Royal Command performances, all the theatres you can name, the West End. Finally, then, can I ask you where to from here?
I don't know, dear. It really depends on
I
what
don't think
we're
I'd like to
asked
know,
to
would
do.
you?
No, I don't want to know too much. But I'd like to feel that between us we will carry on giving people pleasure, and as long as there's wind in the body and use in the limbs, I mean, your limbs tell you when it's time to give up in our business, you know. But as long as we can produce the goods that we're asked for and the demand is there, I suppose we'll carry on. Hopefully. Still like to do a play, because we did The Importance of Being Earnest
Yeah.
2
Yes,
years
it'd be
ago.
fun to do another play,
Evadne's
yes.
Prison, myself as Lady Bracknell. But we'd love to do another play. Yes, that would be nice. And maybe a film. Who knows?
But certainly no retirements.
Not at the moment, no.
No, not yet.